Umbande, Umbande, frater and soror throughout the globe. So, at last, this is the video we were expecting. One of the two videos I think you should see before coming in Greece. Okay, in this first video, we will explain you how these three rhythms of columns existing all over the temples and neoclassical buildings area in the territory of Greece depicts art, the essence, the soul of antiquity and classical era in Greece. I am privileged as my ancestors is Ionians. I am an Ionian. We were located as a civilization in the greater area in the Western Mediterranean area, which now called Minor Asia. As I told you in previous videos, I was born here just as my father and grandfather. I am a third generation fugitive. We come from Smyrna, in an area now called from the Turkish government Alaçatı. As a civilization, we helped in mathematics, in philosophy, in gods that traveled through us to the mainland of Greece, or as we recognize ourselves with the name of Hellenes, HELLENES, or Hellas instead of Greece, as you know my country globally. Hellas, HELLELAS. So let's begin. Okay, as you can see from the picture, we will explain you what these columns mean, depict, and in the end I will show you what I see and what I feel when I see them. We are very, very, very lucky that we live among these ruins, these temples, that if any one of us dive a little bit, instead of seeing them just as simple columns, you will find very symbolic that maybe they are depicting even archetypes and things that these manufacturers and architects and all these scientists built and created these columns were essentially depicting what they felt and what they could in the antiquity and classical era. So let's begin. The column generally is a vertical cylindrical structure made of marble or stone or other material, used by experts to support the roof of a building or to decorate its exterior. In each capital, we meet a different rhythm. So, what is a capital? This is a capital. Okay, this is a capital. Okay, this is a capital. So let's switch our photo to understand what a capital is. Okay. So in this picture, we can see some parts of the temple, which is the capital, the architrave, the frieze that consists from triglyph and metopes, from the cornice, okay, and all this consists the entablature that we will mention analyzing the columns, and the pediment. This is a temple, let's say, a building, okay, which stands with Doric or Ionic or Corinthian columns, or two of them combined. Okay, so let's switch to our previous picture and continue. So let's recap, and in each capital we meet a different rhythm. Each rhythm is an harmonious combination of different dimensions, from where beautiful aesthetic impressions are created. This combination is usually found in two arts, in sculpture and in the decorative part of architecture. I will add also another in philosophy. In the end of this video, be patient, stay, and you will see what I mean. We will combine all these three. Let's move on. Okay, so as we said, this combination is usually found in two arts, in sculpture and in the decorative part of architecture. In the ancient classical Greek era, with the great artists, three architectural rhythms were developed and prevailed, which became known not only in Greece but also in other countries of the world, especially for the construction of temples, which in antiquity were the most official and important object of artistic architecture. The rhythms that we will speak today of the antiquity were Doric, Ionian, and Corinthian. So let's begin with the Doric. Okay, you can see this is the Doric. As you can see, the pictures has some bullet points. You can zoom, you can read it, but also I will add verbally the following. It was the oldest and simplest rhythm that had copied the woodwork. And when we say woodwork, woodworking or lumbering is a wooden frame of a building that in ancient times was made of stone or three trunks, and on them they also supported the wooden roof. So you see from this picture what I mean, okay? That they supported a wooden roof. You can see a wooden roof. Okay, so let's change our picture again. The beauty of the Doric column was the symmetry. It was especially those columns that made of marble. The columns that were the support of the temple were round, and their height was usually 6 times the diameter of the base. The top was thinner than the bottom, as you can see in the picture. It consists of usually 11 vertebrae and has 16 or 20 or 24 ribs around it. You can see the ribs in the flute, okay? What is a vertebrae? Oh, it's easy. Vertebrae in a Doric column, okay, refers to the drums, also known as tambours, the individual cylindrical stone segments that are stacked on top of one another to form the shaft of the column. So, let's continue. The capital is simple, as you can see, okay, from the abacus, echinus, aris. It's really simple. Without any decoration, and it is decorated with 3 to 5 carved lines, the echinus and the abacus, and simple vertical carvings. This was the Doric. Now let's switch to Ionian or Ionic rhythm. The Ionian or Ionic rhythm, it is more decorated than the Doric column. It has a base adorned with various cylinders and various grooves. The base of the Ionian column has been presented in various ancient temples, but also in great buildings with various and excellent designs. The trunk of the column is much thinner, it is taller and has more strakes, usually 20 to 24. The capital in the Ionic rhythm is the head, the top of the column. In ancient times, the decoration of the capital was characteristic of the rhythms. The Ionian is more decorated than the Doric and is characterized by the two spirals that create the impression that it is a design that wraps, resolves around the column. Okay, it gives the sensation of movement, let's say, I will add. Above the capital is the tablature. You saw what a tablature is. Okay, let's see again. This is the tablature of a building or a temple, okay? 3 marble horizontal pillars that support the marble roof of the temple. The pediment. You see the pediment? Okay, great. The Ionian rhythm is elegant and more decorated than the Doric one, but it does not have the imposingness of the Doric, writes a specialist historian. So, what we can see now, the Doric, more simple, more sturdy in the eye, more harmonious than the little bit more decorated with the volute, right? That adds, let's say, a sense of movement. And as you can see, it's associate the Doric rhythm with strength and masculinity, and the Ionic rhythm is associated with elegance and femininity, let's say. So let's continue with the Corinthian rhythm in the classical Greek columns that you will find in buildings and temples in Greece. The Corinthian capital has a history of its own. Its history is impressive, and the way it was created is moving. The Roman architect and writer Vitruvius, in a text, states that the idea of the creation of the capital with a thorn, the acanthus leaves, the helix they do, is attributed to the great sculptor of the 5th century BC, Callimachus. The story goes that once a little girl died in Corinth, and her foster mother, who loved her very much, collected all her toys and favorite items and put them in a basket. You will see the tale of the darky, and we will not cut it in the montage. Her foster mother, who loved her very much, collected all her toys and favorite items and put them in a basket, which after covering them with a plate, rested on the child's grave. However, a thorn root which was there sprouted in early spring, and its shoots wrapped around the basket and under the pressure of the stone bent and formed spirals and spirals. When the sculptor Callimachus took a walk one day in Corinth, he passed by the cemetery and saw this beautiful whole basket with a thorn and was inspired by the creation of the capital. This is how it was named Corinthian, from the city of Corinth, as the Ionian from the civilization of Ionians. Okay, from the city of Corinth where the event took place. And now let's move on to the last part of our video and see some more bullet points and dive into a little bit in philosophy, because also the Corinth rhythm is associated with luxury and richness, and this is the surface, this is the surface. And as the English people say, ignorance is bliss. I don't support the modern explanation of this phrase. Of course, ignorance is bliss, because from ignorant people started everything, because we always start as ignorant and we start asking and searching deeper and deeper, and we stop being ignorant. But the ignorant, when you start as an ignorant, in every speck of your life, you ask the most beautiful questions. Because you are ignorant and you don't know. And you may discover paths that no one else before you could discover. Let's say this is a way of thinking, and of course ignorance is bliss. So let's now see a more flourished picture with more information and see these three rhythms from my perspective. You can Google and find more information, but let's dive, okay, to philosophy and why I see as the greatness that depicts all the philosophy of all this craftsmanship and knowledge our ancestors had. And here what I found. On the verge of good are three units: symmetry, truth, and beauty. Plato, Philebus. The rhythms of the columns are an expression of these three units. The Doric rhythm imitates power with the support of heavy weights and therefore symmetry, because only symmetry is strong. The Ionic rhythm corresponds to wisdom and consequently to truth, as the spiral hints at mental power. The Corinthian rhythm represents kalos, beauty, elegance, since as the most decorated it imitates delicacy and grace. And for the final quote for Vitruvius, I will show you my last picture and what I see when I have in front of my eyes these three columns. This is what I see. This is what I see. The strength, wisdom, and beauty, the passion. This is what I see. And as Vitruvius said, for the end of our video, Vitruvius on architecture said, "The three rhythms are an expression of all three parts of the soul. The Doric rhythm imitates the power of the thymus of emotion. The Ionian rhythm represents the wisdom of the accountant, of the intelligence. The Corinthian rhythm corresponds to the beauty of desire, of love, the zeal and the greatness of intellectual Greece. Umbande, umbande, frater and soror throughout the globe. Take pause in each picture, in this video, study the columns, study them by the side of art, by the side of decorative sculpture in architecture, by the side of architecture, but also by the side of philosophy, as mentioned by Vitruvius and from Plato Philebus. And of course, ignorance is bliss, because only an ignorant man can truly search in depth, asking new questions, okay, searching for himself whatever he wants. This is where I ended up with these three rhythms. Please, before coming to Greece, either is this video of mine or anything else, or Googling in the net, you must first have some basic knowledge, okay, for the three rhythms, where they came from, what they represent, how it was made, okay. And now, in our second video, we will tell you a little bit for Athens, the capital of Greece. These two videos will be the beginning of showing you what we think the most interesting sites you should visit as tourists, or even as inhabitants or citizens or living in Greece. Thank you again for watching, guys. Umbande to all. Umbande.